Everybody to the Full Press Commanders Podcast. My name is George Carmi. Let's get it on. Welcome, everybody, to the Full Press Commanders Podcast. My name is George Carmi, your host for the evening. And today we're here with two special guests, two of my good friends, Ian Cummings and Josh Taylor. How you guys doing today, fellas?
I'm doing good, man.
Yeah, I'll let you go first, Josh. I'm doing good too, man. I mean, getting back from the Senior Bowl, it takes a little bit of time to kind of, once you get home, you're like, all right, I can crash for a little bit, but then you fire up the tape again. You're always you can't really fall behind too much. You got to stay on the hamster wheel, So, but hey, it's draft season. That's what you signed up for. So
exactly right. Mm-hmm. So I should have done a better job. I set you guys up for failure right there. I'm sorry about that, fellas. Let me introduce Josh first. So what's up, Josh Taylor? Josh Taylor from the Draft Takeover Podcast. How you doing? You doing all right today, man?
I'm doing good. Like Ian said, just takes a minute. I was back to work today. I'm like, back to reality. After it was like a crazy week. I mean, I told people at work, I was like, it's like I was dreaming and I had to wake up. So that sucks. Yeah, it was a great time. Can't complain.
I saw him a couple times in person down there, and he was like a kid, had that twinkle in his eye. He was like, man, he was in his element, man. It was cool to see though.
That is really cool. I'm really happy for Josh too. I've known Josh for a couple of years now. I know he's really aspiring to make this a full-time pursuit. So good job, Josh. Happy. We're really excited to hear about this. And Ian, how you doing, man? How was the overall experience for you?
Yeah, it was good. It was my second year. Last year was my first, but it was really different because last year, it was more restricted. A lot more people there. You can connect with guys, and I didn't get the confidence to talk to any scouts yet. I couldn't really pinpoint them. I got to practice that, but that's my goal for next year. Try to talk it up with the scout. But I was talking with some draft guys from Twitter. Got to meet some guys in person. That's always awesome. That's always a good experience, meeting them in person for the first time, and you're chopping it up. So I had seafood. I had oysters for the first time, so that was another one off the field. But
they're very good. Horseradish and a little cocktail sauce sometimes delicious.
No, man, I'm not. What's the word? I'm not cultured enough.
Okay.
To do that. Yeah, but I'll get there. I'll get there in the next few years for sure.
Cool. Yeah, and I haven't formally introduced Ian yet. So Ian is a draft analyst at the Pro Football Network. So thank you for coming by, guys. So today we're just basically trying to celebrate the Senior Bowl and kind of learn from you guys and kind of hear about your experiences. So let's break it up real quick, guys. So let's start off with Josh. So Josh, what was your overall experience? Like, how did you feel about the Senior Bowl? Was it really eye-opening for you? Was it a positive experience? Let's kind of hear about it from start to end.
Yeah, so Ian, he nailed it on the head. It was completely different than last year. Last year was kind of like relaxed, like you just went to practice, you went back to your hotel. you did your write-ups and videos, and then you just went to practice again until game day. But this year it was totally different, especially like with like the media breakfast, the radio row. There's just so many more opportunities for you to talk to players, talk to, like you said, scouts, people with like the draft network, and just interact with people. And people were just so open to everything. Like there wasn't one person that was just like, oh yeah, like I don't know you, like why are you talking to me, kind of thing. Like everyone was just so open the entire time. But just the experience. And like I said, I somehow managed to get on the field for the game. So like that alone, like made the whole trip worth it. But it's just, I said this when I was talking to Big Doug, just like, I know Ian's with like PFN, like they're official, but like, I don't, work for a company and like that. I'm just like my own independent guy. Like I'm part of a network and like we're building something, but we're not where we want to be yet. But he like Jim Nagy just gives all these opportunities to guys, try to do the same thing as like the draft network and all these other big name people. So it's cool to be able to be like, hey, I'm a part of this. I can still do this. I'm like you said, I'm inspiring to do this full time. So it's just good to know, like you have the opportunities out there, and it just gives you so many, segues into whatever you want to do with the draft stuff, but talk to players, like I said, talk to scouts, stuff like that. So it's just being able to have that opportunity, first off, is just amazing. And then how fun it actually was just blew all expectations I had for this year just out of the water.
That's awesome. So you guys both talked about like being more loose and being able to like experience more. Was that because of COVID restrictions were kind of going away? Is that the major difference, or like what happened between last year and this year?
Yeah, I mean,
COVID.
I'll start with that one real quick because I feel like that was part of it, but I
Mhm.
actually feel like the bigger part was just having an extra year under your belt. The
Mhm.
confidence for me,
That's awesome.
going last year and then coming back to this year,
Mhm.
it was weird, man. Like you get to that field and you're like, all right, I've been here before. I got
That's
this.
awesome.
I got this. So it was definitely more the experience factor. It really surprised me how fast it clicked this year. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I know what I got to do. I know what's up this year. It's definitely different. And I'm excited to go next year and see
Mhm.
how much more confident I am then. Because I feel like, the more experience you get under your belt, the more comfortable you get in that environment.
Mhm.
It's just going to take your performance and, take, what you get out of it to another level. So that I think it was more the experience element for me.
That's cool. And what was
Yeah.
your setup? I'm just curious, Josh, like both you guys. So what was your setup? Did you guys come in with like a pad and paper? Do you guys have like cameras got a videotape? And what was your strategy going into the game? Josh, start off with you.
I had like my camera just because like I told Ian last year, like I was just taking pictures of like guys and posting on Twitter. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now too. And then like guys
Mhm.
like DM you, reach out to you. That's a good way to get them on your show or like talk to them, ask them even more questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ian pulled out like the pen and paper. He was ready to go. I was like, all right, like I gotta keep up with Ian. Like I did that a little bit last year, but I was just so like in the moment, like afterwards, I was like, dang, there's so much more I could have done. So I guess like
Mhm.
kind of like what you said, like you knew what to expect this year. Like I kind of knew where like the guys are going to be talking like in the podiums and stuff like that. Like I knew like going into it what to do better that I like totally just winged last year. And like I said, I didn't talk to anybody last year. I just like stuck
Mhm.
to myself. I was like, I'm the rookie. Like I can't just be like out here cocky about the whole thing. And I just felt so much more comfortable just walking around. You saw people that you saw last year and then people that you just know. And you're just like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm Josh. Like I follow you. I love all your content, whether you're like
Mhm.
someone that writes and stuff like that. But yeah, I just had my camera. And then I had my list of guys that I like specifically wanted to watch going into it. Last year, I was just like all over the place, just like, all right, this guy's, doing workouts over there. Like, it's just cool being there. But like, I think Ian can attest to that more of knowing what to watch for and kind of learn. I actually learned a lot from Ian this year. I was kind of watching what he was doing, taking some little things that he does out from his little routine. So I was like, all right, let me try this. And it was much better this year for sure.
That's fantastic. Because I know you guys put personally over the past couple of years. And Josh, I know you work so hard and you care about this so much. And Ian is very meticulous and studious and a really strong writer. So I know he's really got that keen eye for everything. Ian, you want to touch base on like what's your strategy going into this? What did you do? Did you have record anything where you take a pen and paper? Like what was your strategy in regard to the focus of the game?
Yeah, and I'll say I'm learning new stuff every day too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm better, like I'm at a better place than I was like a year ago or 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, but the learning process never really ends. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me this year, like I knew I wanted to bring the pen and paper, and that kind of threw me for a loop on Wednesday when it was pouring rain, and it never
Mm-hmm.
stopped either, man. Like you thought you'd
Yeah.
get a break every now and then. I think the only break happened in between the practices. So
Okay.
it was raining and then it stopped and then the practice starts again. So when I need to write notes again, it's raining. So I had to pull out my phone for that and just do notes there. But really what it is just writing abbreviated notes,
Mm-hmm.
something that you can write really quickly because it's like 5 seconds, 10 seconds later, it's the next rep. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the trenches this year. I watched
Mm-hmm.
the trenches last year. So, for me, it's really fast paced and it can be a little cluttered sometimes too. So you really got to
Mm-hmm.
focus and then you got to write down your notes really efficiently. And then the next step is coming. You don't want to miss a thing. So you really got to figure out how to be efficient. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a inexact science that I'm still working at, but it was better to at least have the feel coming into this one, knowing where the reps usually take place, usually at the end zone,
Mm-hmm.
moving to the center of the field for 7-on-7s and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing what to expect and where to look for things is,
Mm-hmm.
that in itself is a big turning point. So it was fun. Really the pen and paper. It's a little old school. I might try to move up to something else next year, but it works for me right now. And it's always good to have multiple options in case you need to be flexible.
Exactly right, man. Cool. That's awesome. So what's up? Shout out Hawk. I see you over there, man. What's up, man? How you doing? So Josh, going into the game, right? Let's talk about the practices and how it was set up. Did you guys have was there a morning practice and an afternoon practice, or how was that set up? And then going into the practices, like what were you keeping an eye on? What were you looking for? Like what key players or anything like that?
So like it was split up by teams. Like I want to say American team went first or national. I can't remember which team went first. It might have
National
been
team.
national team went
Yeah.
first. So it was like from 11:30 to like 1:30, and then it was 2 to 4. So they just kind of flipped. So they just kind of split it in half.
Okay.
But it went by quick. Like that's the first thing I like remembered from the first practice. Like, oh dang, it's over already. Like you're just so into it. But of course, I was watching the quarterbacks. That was like top priority for me, obviously, with Washington. And then just, the guys I've been paying attention to as, the season ended was Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Carson Strong, Desmond Ritter, and Bailey Zappi. So I was like keened in on quarterbacks, but then also there's like a list of guys that I really liked that I was just trying to watch. And there was actually a couple of players that like opted out right before. Like Jahan Dotson, Devin Lloyd was like two guys I was really big on. So like honestly, that's what I was looking for. I'm like, all right, where are these two guys at? Like I don't see them. And I think Ian even said like, yeah, these guys opted out. I'm like, what?
Yeah. I was bummed out about that too, man. I was excited to see them. Jaquan Brisker too. There were a few guys.
Dude, if those three guys would have showed up, like it would have been nuts. But a lot of guys like stepped up in their place and like actually killed it. But like for me, it was just all eyes on the quarterbacks. And like I said, they kind of like split up. They would do different drills. Like they were just all throughout the field. So like Ian was talking about, like you have to find out where your position is. Like D-line was over here, and then tight ends like way on the other side of the field with quarterbacks like running separate drills and stuff like that. So I was just all eyes were on QBs, and it still is. That's not going to end until we actually find our guy.
You guys are so lucky too. Very rarely in the Senior Bowl do we have like 6 of the top 7 quarterbacks that are featured. You get to see them behind the scenes, see those practices. That's fantastic. So I really want to hear about that actually. So we'll start off with Ian. I'll come back to you, Josh. Ian, who stood out, man? Like what quarterbacks really stood out? Like how did the practices look? I know was there some bad weather. I heard Kenny Pickett kind of struggled a little bit as well with his, like, fumbling with some snaps. So I want to hear your perspective. What do you see?
Yeah, so it was a fun weekend. Josh will be able to speak more to this because I know he got to actually talk to a couple guys in person.
I want to hear about that. Awesome.
That's a completely that's a completely new element because I know, we always get fixated on the physical traits and the mechanics and stuff on tape because really that's all that we have, legitimate access to. You don't always have complete access to who these guys are as people off the field. Luckily, it looks like we're mostly dealing with really good characters this year. I don't think we're dealing with any super bad characters, so that's a good thing. But really, what we can see, what we can watch is what they do on the field, right? So this week, I didn't get to watch them a ton in person. I mainly went back through the tape on the Exos and kind of circled back and saw what I could find there. And I think the traits definitely pop for a lot of these guys. I think we have to start with Malik Willis. I mean, that guy through the entire week. I mean, the mobility. I mean, we saw it in the game, right? I mean, I think he had like a 38-inch vertical and a 4.5 on Feldman's Freaks. So the guy can move. He's built like a tank. I know both him and Howell measured in at like 6 foot 220. So those guys are really, really big, and
hey, Ian, pause for 1 second. So I'm just for my own curiosity, did they do the measure? They did do the measurables at the Senior Bowl as well, right? Besides practices.
Yeah, okay. They used to have an event for it where the guys would come in and they'd get up on a stage and stuff and measure. Now, I think this year they just measured them when they came in, when they arrived one by one. But they measure them for sure, and they get those official measurements. For some guys, it's really different, but usually for quarterbacks, it's not too much different. So, but Willis definitely popped. He's got the mobility. He can throw from different arm angles, and he's got a really strong arm too. He can drive it down the field into tight windows. I thought Howell's popped too, especially on day one. Man, I mean, that guy came in and was firing guns blazing right out the gate. He's got pretty good mobility too. He can go off script. Not quite the agile guy that Willis is, but I was impressed by him because I was coming in like, oh, he might be like that burly guy who's a little, not super agile, but no, he can move a little bit. I think Kenny Pickett, me personally, I was circling back and I made sure to watch that day too. And there were a couple fumbled snaps, but I think overall, how I expected it to affect him, or how you would expect it to affect him with the smaller hands, I don't think it affected him that much, to be honest with you. And he was getting pretty good velocity. There were a couple wobbly passes here and there, but you always want to ask yourself, relative to what I would expect, did it affect him to that degree? I don't think it did. And then he came back on day 3, had some really nice passes. There was one that I shared on Twitter where, and I've always been of the mind that I think if you want a guy that can start right away, it's Pickett. And to me, the Senior Bowl, he didn't super stand out, right? He didn't like blow anyone away, but I don't think he was super inconsistent either. And I think that he had some good plays. There was that one that I shared on Twitter where he sees the linebacker in the middle of the field and there's that crossing route and he holds him to that first window with his eyes just long enough to open up the second window, and then anticipates and leads his receiver. That's the kind of processing you get from Pickett. And then I thought, he showed he had good mechanics, some scissor feet on his dropbacks, but again, he's really good at snapping back to congruence and getting those hips around it and getting that torque on it, and that can generate velocity for him. So I think for Pickett, he checked the boxes at least, which is, I think, at least show that the hand size isn't a debilitating issue. It definitely wasn't. Like there were a couple hiccups, but it wasn't enough for me to say. It wasn't enough for me to freak out about it. I think Desmond Ritter was another guy that you got to bring up. I think, and Carson Strong. I think Carson Strong, that arm pop too. He had a little bit of a rough time on day 2. But I think the arm talent with him, you could argue he has the strongest arm in the class, and especially on day 3, he makes the little stuff look so easy with that arm. There's some red zone throws where they were trying to arc it and get that velocity in the corner. It's really tough to throw those arc passes with pace on them, and he can do that really easily. He's got a great arm. For me, I heard from a couple of people that he didn't interview as well as the other guys, so that's something to keep. That's something to watch in the future, but again, not anything to run with. I think for what you're looking at with Strong, the arm is definitely there. And Desmond Ritter too. I mean, he's athletic and he's got a pretty good arm. It pops off his hand. The mechanics is the biggest thing with him. There are a lot of little inconsistencies that show up every now and then. When he's in rhythm, he has good mechanics and he can throw it, but there's little things that he needs to clean up and needs to be more consistent with. And I think that showed up this week. But I think for me, watching Ritter, I took solace in the fact that he had a really, really rough first day. Everyone I talked to said, he was really uneven, really inconsistent, and he really picked it up and kind of trended up through the week, and it kind of culminated with a very strong showing in the game itself. So I think that, I'd rather see a guy start off rough and pick it up, and I think that's exactly what Ritter did. He's a great character guy. Everyone raves about him as a leader. So I think he won a few fans today during this week too. Everyone's going to say, it's a little, it's not a very spectacular group. No one that I'm blown away by, but I do think there's a lot of natural talent in this group. And it's all about, do they have the talent and the mentality where I'd want to develop them? And I think there's a lot of guys who could check those boxes for NFL teams in this group.
Gotcha. Very good. So multiple clay for sure. So real quick, we'll do one more with you, Ian, before I throw it over to Josh. So Ritter's a hot topic in the Washington community, right? Do you foresee him as a draft high riser? Do you think he'll be maybe project in the first round? Should Washington take a look at him? Is he more of a second round kind of pick? Where do you project Ritter at this time? I know it is February. We have a long way to go, but what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so I've always been of the mind that he's more of a day 2 guy for me.
Okay.
And part of it is, but I'm trying to dive into his tape more and really get into the details of his mechanics, because it is a very detail oriented thing. You don't really realize until you really focus on it. But the thing that worries me with Ritter, and I'll start with this, is that he was like a 4-year starter and the mechanic issues never quite got ironed out for him. They still always show up occasionally. I do think though, he has shown he can keep a steady base. He's shown he can get that hip rotation, keep his shoulders level. You always want to start with the base, because the base kind of dictates the shoulders. If your back foot is dropping out, that might cause your front shoulder to tip up. That's one problem that I have with Sam Howell. It shows up on his tape every now and then where he drops that back foot on his release, and it can tug his shoulders around and make those shoulders inconsistent. I still think he's pretty accurate for it, which is impressive. But it is something that shows up, and I think it shows up with Ritter occasionally too. For Ritter, for every quarterback, it's a little bit different. I have some qualms with Strong. I have some qualms with Pickett, even though I think he's the most mechanically sound guy. Everyone has different nuances to what they need to improve. With Ritter, it's just, sometimes that base is a little too wide. And when it's too wide, you can't always rotate your hips through as you throw. Can't always get adequate velocity. Can't always keep your shoulders level. And then also his footwork can be inconsistent too. Dropping back, he gets scissor feet. And both him and Pickett have scissor feet, which is where they cross their feet on the drop back. You usually want them to keep their base and then shuffle back so that they can quickly, set and throw. But when you have that scissor feet, it kind of prevents you from doing that. So I think, but with Pickett, at least he snaps back. He's really good with that muscle memory and getting back to congruence. With Ritter, the scissor feet kind of precipitates and causes this kind of chain reaction where his footwork get progressively more volatile as he goes back. And you'll see reps where there's some reps where he has a really good base, stays within his cylinder and fires and gets that rotation. There's other reps where, he's just kind of staggered the whole way through. And I posted one earlier today where he dropped back, pressure got to him, and he threw it. His heels were literally facing one another. So if you try to throw it when your heels are facing one another, you can go in the backyard and try it. That locks your hips really easily.
100%.
You can't get the adequate rotation. You can't get enough velocity. You can't drive it to your guy. And it's exactly what happened. He couldn't get rotation because his heels were kind of, clicked together. I think it's called a heel click. But, when they're facing like that, you want your feet to be parallel so that your base is sound. Otherwise, you don't get that rotation. And we saw on that clip the pass died out for him. So it's little things like that can really impact your accuracy, and you really need to be refined. I think Ritter has the mentality that you can work with, and he's a good character
size
guy.
Too. He's a pretty big guy, right? He's pretty tall.
He's a pretty big guy. I think he
Yeah.
measured in. I can't remember what he measured in at. I think it was like
I can look it up while you're
6'3",
talking.
6'4".
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But he's big. He's athletic. He's got an arm too. I've been kind of grappling with his arm strength and how to kind of gauge it, but I do think he has good arm strength. Maybe not an elite arm, but he can generate easy velocity. He can throw at different arm angles. So I think you look at that. You know, it's 6'4". Yeah. So he's got good size, good athleticism, really good athletic and physical traits. It's just a matter of refining the mechanics, man. You know, if he gets with a good quarterback coach, maybe it can happen. I just think at this point, it's been a problem for so long. It's trending toward now. Yeah, it's trending toward habit territory.
Yeah.
It can take a while to break those. Some guys don't break them. So that's the thing. You're kind of banking on that. It's kind of a risk, right? But, you know, some teams are going to be willing to take it. So I think the more I watch Ritter, the more I see the upside that's worth banking on. It's just there's a lot of big risks, too, that you might not have as much with a guy like Willis or Howell, because I think Willis and Howell, I think they may be more easily moldable in the right scheme than Ritter, because Ritter's spent so much time, you know, kind of ironing in these bad habits. It's going to take even longer to break them, maybe. So, you know, that's the warning with him. But again, the talent is there.
That's a fantastic analysis, and I really appreciate that. I really like how you broke down complex topics as well, the whole scissor feet, and people don't really know much about that. I was really educational. Thank you for that, Ian. Appreciate it.
And you know, I like to bounce off of my other draft guys. I know Damian Parsons is a great one. I'm Michael Haas. I talk with him a lot. I know you guys know him, but you know, there's little things about mechanics. Whenever you don't know something, always feel free to bounce it off someone else.
100%.
It's great to hear how people explain it.
That's how we learn from each other. That's why you guys are on the podcast. I want to learn from you guys too. So thank you for coming on. So Josh, speaking of which, so we talk often, and you know, I'm not a really big proponent of Sam Howell, but I know you are. Like, did you get like reinforcement over during the Senior Bowl weekend? Do you feel confident in him? Like, how did Sam Howell compare? How did he impress you? And was he the most impressive quarterback of your opinion, or what do you think?
Yeah, so like I came away from the Senior Bowl both with Malik Willis and Sam Howell. Like, I knew like how I felt about them, and they just kind of like confirmed to me like how I felt. And I'd say like I agree with what Ian said with like stance wise, and Malik Willis does the same thing too. Like sometimes he leans back or kind of like floats, so like he fades away. Like that one pass to Calvin Austin during the game, like to the left sideline, he kind of just like faded away from me. Like, dude, like set your stance and just deliver like a rocket, you know. And I'm sure I talk to his quarterback coach all the time. It drives him nuts. But the thing with Howell and Willis that I really like was just their mobility and how they, you know, show that they can throw on the run and stuff like that. That's what I don't like about a guy like Matt Corral, who we, you know, didn't get to see. Is I don't know how his running style is going to translate to the next level, you know, especially with his size, his frame, and his durability. Like if he, you know, he takes hits when he's not, you know, supposed to. Like,
I see that too. He's too
it's
aggressive when he runs.
Uncalled for. Yeah, but like with Sam Howell, like you said, he's a shorter, stocky dude. I mean, he's kind of like my size, but he's just way more athletic. Like I'm like right at 5'11", 620. So like I'd imagine like me running that fast, like I feel like I can throw somebody over. But like with his, you know, strong running, and then with Malik Willis's elusiveness, I just think their offensive style really translates better to the league. You know, Kenny Pickett can run. I don't see them doing like a lot of like a run like design plays where they're going to be doing like with Malik Willis and Sam Howell. But I just arm strength wise, Malik Willis to me had the most impressive arm. Like I think he had the farthest pass. He had the most velocity recorded throughout the whole week. Sam Howell had the most RPMs on his spin rate in his ball, so he can let that thing rip. When guys like Carson Strong, like the numbers were kind of like you're supposed to have the strongest arm, and like it didn't look terrible. But at the same time, I just came away more impressed by the arm in person with Sam Howell and Malik Willis. Which mean like, dang, they got some zip to it. And you know, they were anticipating throws. I didn't see like any ducks, especially in the rain. I feel like they both had a really good practice in the rain. Like I said, Kenny Pickett looked good, but I don't think one quarterback was like, oh man, this guy's killing it. Like maybe Malik Willis, because he was like the buzz all week long. But I feel like you just kind of came away with it as in like, all right, yep, Kenny Pickett's 1. Malik Willis arguably number 2. You can say Corral 3, Howell 3, and then vice versa for that. I think I actually gained more respect for Ritter. Like Ian said, he got better throughout the entire week. I think he had the best performance during the game too. Like I feel like the throws that he was making, especially that one to Christian Watson. I mean, he was making some good throws during the game. Like I think that's what impressed me the most. And like I said on my video, like it was Desmond Ritter in the game was how he plays in the game all season long. Like he doesn't do anything like crazy stupid. Sometimes accuracy is a little bit off, but he can deliver a good ball. So I think if anything that I learned from this week is Desmond Ritter maybe has more than I've given him credit for so far this entire offseason.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
It was a week where I think there wasn't anything super mind blowing that happened. So most people came out of the week with the same ranking that they came into it with. But it's always something where you never want to change your opinions like super a ton off of a week of practices and one game. Where they don't even get full reps, right? But it is a opportunity to kind of take different stuff into account. And I think especially with Ritter, we were able to do that this week, and it kind of opens our eyes to new perspectives. So it's a valuable experience in that sense, but it's not something you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You got to learn how to use it for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all the quarterbacks that like I talked to, I was like, "What are y'all like working on specifically?" And every single one was like, "We're learning a brand new playbook this week, and we're all like taking snaps under center. Like we have never done that before. It's a whole new style. Like they're having to worry about taking the clean handoff." Like you said, dropping back, whether it's 3, 5, 7 steps, like it's just a whole new process. It's kind of hard to break. Like you said, that muscle memorization of in college, you're running the RPO and you're just taking it out shotgun. You're faking the handoff, pulling it out and throwing it. Like it's just completely different. And it's all about footwork and worrying about that clean drop off, but then still like keeping your eyes, downfield to where you're reading the defense. You're not like overthinking every single motion. But that like every quarterback that I talked to, I didn't get to talk to Carson Strong and Bailey much, but especially Malik and Sam, they're like, man, it was tough, like learning this playbook in like the first like few days and having to go out and practice and execute this and then having to worry about getting it under center. And this might sound stupid, but I was like, this might be easier for like Sam Howell and Malik Willis because they are shorter. Like they're not having to like, get down under center too much. Like it's a little bit easier to get used to, but I think they both, and even Kenny Pickett too, just look really comfortable running that offense. Like I didn't see a time where it's like, man, like these guys, like they really, like they look like they haven't played under center before. I know they've been doing this all off season, like with their quarterback coaches and stuff like that, but to me, everyone looked comfortable like under center for the first time. That's what was impressive to me.
Yeah, did anyone look uncomfortable, Josh? Did anyone look like stand out in the wrong way? Or everyone looked pretty good for the most part?
I mean, everyone looked pretty good. Only guy I did, like I said, I wasn't too impressed with was Carson Strong. He looked really good first practice, but like the second one, I was like, I didn't get much out of it. And then even in the game, I was just like, it didn't excite me like I was hoping it would. Like I was hyping up his throws in the first practice because like, he was throwing with zip like right away. But then, like when the drills and stuff started coming, he never really stretched the field out. I didn't see
what didn't impress you. So from what I understand from him, he has a rocket arm, but he's like a statue in the pocket, right? Was that affirmed at the Senior Bowl practices as well, or what kind of stood out?
He looked pretty good in the pocket, like rolling out when he had to and stuff. There was a couple throws like downfield. They just didn't have the arm strength to it, which I thought it would. Like I don't know, Ian. Maybe especially I don't know if it was a day 1 or day 2 when they were like throwing to the right side of the field, and he had a couple like deep like right sideline throws. It just didn't get there. They were underthrown. I was like, I was expecting a little bit more.
I thought he lofted. I think it was because he does have the arm strength, and you can see that when he does put complete like full effort on his throws, especially that first that he was zipping them, right? Like it was some of the highest velocity there. Now I think Willis definitely showed a more consistently strong arm through the week. I think it was strong what it was on day 2. And, I don't quite know. I still got to watch back and like pinpoint it. I've watched it back a couple of times, but, it's weird, right? Because you expect it to pop off and it did quite. I think the mechanics were a little off at sometimes through the week. There's a little hitch he has at the top of his drop where he kind of brings that back foot up a little bit before he sets his base and throws. That might have had something to do with it. I think his elbow was kind of concave on a few reps too, where he tucked it a little too much. I remember we saw that with Dwayne Haskins a lot at Washington, and that can kind of impact your throws too. And then some of them too, those deep passes, man, they're very timing oriented. They're very trajectory oriented. I think he just lofted a few of them, put too much loft on them, not enough velocity, and that kind of comes with chemistry. Some of the quarterbacks are still building chemistry. And I know, especially with Carson Strong early on, there was a noticeable difference at times between him throwing to his guys, Romeo Doubs and Cole Turner and other receivers, because he has chemistry with them. He played in college with them. So, I think that's kind of what it was. But I did notice too, Carson Strong, some throws he was putting the heat on, and some throws he was kind of just going through the motions. It was a little inconsistent sometimes. So it's tough to gauge, especially in such a limited sample size. But he definitely looked a little uneven at times.
Gotcha. Okay, so safe to say Carson Strong did not really impress you too much at the camp. Is Malik Willis the surefire number one takeaway from the best quarterback in your opinion walking away from camp? And do you think he was the most impressive? And who would you still take number one overall in the first round? Start with you, Josh.
I mean, I was most impressed with Malik in person. I still think
physically,
if like say Washington's at 11 and no quarterback's been taken yet, I still think you. As of today, I'm still going Pickett just because I think he's the most ready to start day one. I think he's, we talk about the upside with Malik Willis, but I still think there's still a few more things that he's working on to get to like that consistent starting, a consistent thrower starting at the next level. I think, but I just think Kenny Pickett's the more ready, and it's his experience. And you can say what you want about those first few years where he just kind of mellowed through college and then he just took off. So I'm excited to see what that next level Pickett looks like. Is this, his ceiling, like, is he tapped out, or is he like just now getting started on this like incline for Kenny Pickett? But I would still take him number one because, you're trying to win games right away. And I think Kenny Pickett would help you, win more games right away than Malik Willis would. But Malik Willis might be the better long-term guy. You just don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. And then Josh, before I throw it over to Ian, there's concerns about like Malik's transition to the NFL. Do you feel like there's that large of a gap? Do you think he's very far away from maybe even starting next season, or it's too early to tell? What do you think about that?
I don't think so at all. Cause I like talking to him and then talking to his coach, like he just gets like, he knows what he's working on. He knows what he has to do. Like, like he was like, one of the questions I asked him was like, coming to the league, like how ready are you to start right away? And he was like, man, like, it's just all about like what team I go to. Like, I've got to learn the verbiage. I've got to learn the plays and get settled into that offense. He's like, even, if I played at Auburn, Georgia, Liberty, like it doesn't matter. They're all completely different offensively. I could have balled out Liberty and been terrible at Alabama just, if I didn't adjust to the offense well. So I think he is like, he gets it. He knows what he has to do. And he's been working hard, to get these pro style offenses down, to where he like, doesn't matter where he goes. I think he'll be able to transition well into that offense, and then just having that athletic ability to make something from nothing, the off script plays, the running with his legs. I mean, you saw it in the during the Senior Bowl game itself. Like he ran like 50 yards on a gain of like 20, but just being able to make those kind of plays, you either have that ability or you don't. Like you can't just teach that instinct, that speed. Sure. Yeah, he has it. So I think that helps him. If he does make bad throws or if something's not there that he doesn't like, I don't think he's just going to start, forcing throws down the field. Like I've got to be an NFL passer now. I have to throw it, 40 times a game and lean on my arm more. I think he's smart enough to know when to pull the trigger with his legs or when to pull the trigger with his arm.
There you go. And Josh, one last thing before I throw it over to Ian. Like, what was your overall impression from his character? I know you actually got to talk to him and see him in person, maybe even ask him a couple questions. Did you come off impressed? Did he seem like he was ready to put in the hard work? Did he seem like he was pretty confident in the playbook? What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, so I actually ran into his parents by accident. Like I was sitting in front of them during the first practice, and I was like, "Oh, let me get out of y'all's way. Like I'm just trying to watch Malik." And like, "Oh, me too. That's my son." I was like, "Hey," like so I just built this connection like with them like right off the jump. And then he like comes over there like after practice. So that was like my first time talking to him. But then like at the breakfast itself, you could get like one-on-one time with him and actually talk to him and stuff. But I felt really good. Like his character to me is A1. Like he has the sweetest parents in the world, first off. But for him, like even if you're during the game itself, oh yeah, there's me and Malik after the game. So like his parents, I was on the field and his mom's like, "Hey, I remember you, like come take our picture." And I was like, "Duh." Like, of course I will. But you can just tell, like, he's just a down to earth guy. Like, he's like, I'm going to use my platform, to talk about my faith. I'm not worried about all this other stuff. Like, they're like asking him, like, do you think you're the best quarterback so far this week? And he's like, man, like, I'm just having a good time all like around all these guys. And like, I feel like I'm getting better. And he's like, that's what I wanted to do here. He didn't have like some set agenda here to like become the number one quarterback. He's like, I just want to get better, work with all these guys that I've got a connection with, and just get better together. So mindset wise, him and Howell and Pickett like killed it. Like every time I talked to them, they said Pickett was like the best interviewer all weekend, and I totally see why. But just talking to Howell and Malik, like they're just, I feel like you get that. Like there's a couple guys you talk to. I'm not gonna throw out names. You're like, this guy's kind of out there. Like he's a little weird, or just you can tell like he just didn't have like he didn't know what to say at times, or he'd repeat himself, like just kind of say the same thing. But with Malik and Howell, it just they were just saying all the right things, and you could truly tell. Like Howell's go-to thing was like, I just want to show them who I am as a person. I feel like my tapes showed who I am as a quarterback, but I want to
Mhm.
show, in these interviews and talking to y'all, like I want y'all to learn the kind of guy I am, because that's important. Like you talk about guys taking like qualitative leaps, like in the next level, like personality wise.
Mhm.
I mean, talk about Dwayne Haskins. I hate to say it, but so Coach Sean, which is Malik's quarterback coach, said still to this day, Dwayne Haskins is the best quarterback he has ever worked with. Like
His
talent
physical
wise,
tools.
yeah,
Mhm.
he
Arm
said
strength, yeah.
Haskins is it. He just didn't have everything else. And it shows.
Sad, right?
And we learned that the hard way. And to me, that's absolutely important, because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't adapt to that next level, you've got paid, you've got endorsements, you have all this other stuff. If you're not clicking mentally and just wanting to be better as a person and a player, then it's a waste. So like for me, I came away from it just impressed with all the guys, honestly, that we talked to, especially the quarterbacks. But
cool.
But yeah, those ones stuck out for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks, Josh. Ian, what about you? Who is the biggest quarterback that you were impressed by, maybe physically or mentally? And then how would you rank the quarterbacks moving forward?
Probably Malik Willis. And
Okay.
Josh hit the nail on the head talking about, I think the physical traits definitely stand out, but also having that mental makeup where I think he can develop and grow into that starting role. And I think, when you're looking for how to project these guys, because it can be a tough exercise to project them, for growth at the NFL level, I think a good kind of anchor to fall back to is, information, how much they retain, how much they, adapt mid-practice week. And I think I remember the Lions quarterbacks coach, Mark Brunell, was really excited about a simple 5-read play that Malik Willis had, starting at the left side of the field, working to the right. And then ultimately it was just a check down, right? Because the right side, it was in the flat, it was a check down. But he got through all 5 progressions. He worked across the field. And so it's not an unspectacular play, but just doing the little things right, at least getting that down. And I think Malik Willis, especially, the Liberty offense didn't always help him. There were times he did create a lot of pressure for himself, because he does defer to that athletic ability, but also the offensive line wasn't very great. And, watching the route concepts too, there were some plays that were kind of doomed from the start, funneling the pass catchers into certain areas. And at that point, if you're Malik Willis, you have to create, right? So I think getting to an NFL system with NFL coaching could really catalyze his development. And I also think, going back to the athletic and physical skill set that he does have, I think in a way, having that athleticism, that off-script ability is a pro-ready trait. You don't always hear about that, connected with the prototypical pro-ready traits, but being able to extend plays and extend your opportunities and open up new windows for the field by rolling out, evading rushers, that in itself can help you deal with adversity early on in your career. So I think looking at Malik Willis, I think he's got that. And I think he has the mental acuity to grow, in the right situation. So this week really sold me on Malik Willis. I was a little unsure. And I love the upside. I love the upside coming into this week. It was like, hey, how is he mentally? Can he at least retain that information? And does he come off as a good guy, down to earth guy? I think he checked all the boxes for me. So he's going to be moving up my board. It's probably him and Pickett at the top. I don't know how I'll order them, but I do think that, Pickett has that mobility too. And I think that was something that drew me to him last October in 2020 when I first got a look at him, or 2021, I think, when I first got a look. No, it was 2 Octobers ago. Okay? It was 2 October because it was before his breakout season.
Yeah.
But the thing that drew me to him, and Pickett had a 4.75 40 and a 35-inch vertical out of high school. So the dude's an athlete. People don't talk about that a ton, but I think he'll test better than people expect. And he's always had that athleticism to go off script, and he's got great off platform ability, the arm talent, the elasticity to at least generate velocity off platform. And then again, you hear him talk too, like Josh said, he's another very good interviewer. And you can, there's an interview series on YouTube but from Panther Lair. It's a Pittsburgh site run by Chris Peak. You look that up and you listen to Pickett talk, you can tell, again, he's a down-to-earth guy, but there's a few questions where Chris asks him about stuff that happened in the game, and he has very, very good recall. He'll go right back to the situation, and he's like, yeah, we had the nickel blitzing. We knew we had to—
I love when quarterbacks do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we had a 5-shot
day moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So Pickett, you can tell he's got good recall. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and at the same time, I think he has the physical traits too. So for me, it's Pickett and Willis at the top. This kind of opened my eyes to Sam Howell too. I'm going to go back to Howell's tape and look at that. I'm still waiting for more All-22. It's proven hard to get this year, but once I get it, we're going to go through it. And I know there's some mechanical issues that, I have with him, but that goes for every quarterback. That's not something— you can't weigh it heavier for one guy than you do another. So I think looking at the mechanics, I think it's something that you could potentially fix, and he's got the traits too. So I think, looking at Howell and Desmond Ritter, two down-to-earth, high-character guys with good physical tools, I think for me, this was a big week, and, not selling them completely, like I still have questions, but at least opening my eyes to what they could become, and it's a great week for that. So I think, coming away from this week, definitely Pickett and Willis were two winners for different reasons. I think for Willis, it was just showing that his physical tools are, at the top of class. For Pickett, it was proving that his hand size wouldn't make him a liability, and I think he did that too. So I think they're winners, but then Desmond Ritter too, growing through the week, and Sam Howell.
Ritter, get my eyes open for him for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I think you look at those guys, and I think we got a really exciting class. People will say it's a bad class. People will say it's the worst class ever. No, it's not. Don't run with the hyperbole. People will say there's not a starter in this class. First off, not a starter. Being a starter, that depends on the situation too. Right? So it's not just about the prospect, but what these guys can become. I think all four can become starting quarterbacks in the league. It's just a matter of how far can they get. But, I think all the guys have good mentalities, good physical skill sets. So it's at least something to invest in if you're looking for a quarterback.
Awesome. Very intriguing. Very interesting. So, Josh, I don't know if you actually tweeted this, or maybe I just saw it while I was scrolling through the Twitter feed. So I think didn't Mike Tomlin run across the field to kind of grab Malik Willis to kind of get a one-on-one conversation with him? And, that was actually pretty interesting, because I know Kenny Pickett being at the University of Pittsburgh basically had the shared shared facilities with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we obviously thought that Pickett and the Steelers were a tight connection. Touch on that if either one of you guys know anything about the whole Steelers vibe towards Malik Willis. And do you guys also think that is there going to be a trade up into the top 5, top 10 for these quarterbacks? Or do you think they're still going to slide? What do you guys think about that? So, Josh, we'll start off with you.
So, Mike Tomlin, because he was there. I mean, there was a lot of coaches there, especially college coaches. I mean, like PJ Fleck, James Franklin, there was a ton of people there. But Tomlin legit ran across the entire field, grabbed him after practice. I think even talked with his parents too afterwards. And because the morning after is when I saw Coach Sean McAvoy, because he was there all week long with Malik too. And we talked about it, and he's like, no, they talked to him for about 45 minutes last night, which is a long time for because you're speed dating all 32 teams while you're there. You're I've talked to everybody. It was 10, 15-minute hits. But, they talked to him for a long time. But the thing is, Pittsburgh doesn't trade picks away. They hate it.
Yeah.
But they've also never, been in a situation without Big Ben in a very, very long time. So that's something I've been seeing. I think they would trade up for a Kenny Pickett. But then after I saw, how invested they were with their time with Malik Willis, I was like, man, they might trade up with the Giants and take Malik Willis instead of Kenny Pickett. I feel like they've got to know Kenny Pickett. Like you said, they share a lot of the same facilities and stuff like that. They've been around him for, seems like 20 years because he's been there for so long. They have to at least know a good bit of Kenny Pickett. But, Liberty University, it's smaller. It's not too far from Pittsburgh, but still it's not as close as Kenny Pickett is. So I think for me, that was just Mike Tomlin wanting to invest in, him as a person, especially if he's talking with his parents and stuff. He wants, he's recruiting kind of. This is what the college coaches do. They go into your living room, sit down on your couch. They're eating cookies you bake. So that's what it felt like for me. So there's absolutely interest there. Like I said, they don't trade away picks. That's just not what they do. But this is a very urgent situation. They're used to being at the top. They're one of the high prolific
premier programs.
This top tier. So you have to believe, if they don't get a, Rodgers or something like that. Someone said they'd probably get Mariota because he fits what they want to do. They're not going to trade away picks for Malik Willis. But if they like the traits that they saw and they like his mindset, they'll absolutely pull the trigger. They're not going to run it with Haskins and Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph in Pittsburgh and just think that they can, make it to the playoffs, especially with the Bengals in the Super Bowl. That's even more pressure on you now.
That's true. That's a good point. Great point.
So. Yeah, and I'll jump in here too. I think, and me personally, if you know me, I'm one of the bigger Pickett proponents out there, but even I will concede, looking at the two guys side to side, Malik Willis has a considerably higher ceiling at his max projection. Yeah. So if you're looking at that, where you want to be in 4 or 5 years, looking at trading picks for signing Mariota or trading for Willis, you get Willis on 5 years or 4 years of a rookie deal and then the 5th year option. If you get him, so you have the financial stability. But you look at, and I hate to bring this up because everyone brings it up, but Josh Allen, right? It's not a comp. It's meant to be a representation of
Mm-hmm.
the long-term investment for a quarterback. Like no
Mm-hmm.
one thought that Josh Allen was going to be good when he came out, and turns
Mm-hmm.
out he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying Willis can do. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but it's a representation of investing in the physical tools if you think they have the mindset to catalyze growth. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
think they have that, then you're looking at a guy that could be a top 10 quarterback down the road. And that might be better than what Pickett might be, a top 12, top 14 quarterback, a guy who can win you games. But when you're dueling with those other top 5 quarterbacks like Herbert or Allen or Mahomes, he might not be enough for you, right? Like you can win with those guys, but getting to those high level games, is he going to be enough there? I like Pickett, but I would say Willis at his max projection would be more. So if you're the Steelers and you make that judgment, by all means make the call. And that's why I think Willis, could also be the top quarterback off the board.
I wouldn't be surprised, Ian.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
he's got a
surprised.
chance.
I feel like, just like you said, the AFC divisional game, where basically the Bills and the Chiefs are going back and forth, going into overtime. Just those innate physical traits by Mahomes and Allen, I just definitely like reshifted the mindset of NFL, personnel. So it definitely is pretty interesting. Let me ask you guys one more question. We can bring it on home. So we talked about quarterbacks for a very long time. What other non-quarterbacks really popped to you that you found was really intriguing, that stood out, that you're really happy with? Josh, I'll throw it to you.
For me, the wide receivers, like I said, top guy that I really wanted to see, Dotson, wasn't there. So I was like, man, like I'm not as invested in these wide receivers. But then you saw, Romeo Doubs show up. You saw Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, Trey Lance's old guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even Jalen Tolbert, the local, South Alabama guy. They're just all three like long, lengthy guys, but they all played, pretty different. Like Watson was so smooth in his routes. Like you see a big guy like AGG who's just like slower in his routes, can't get separation. That guy can run a route. Like his draft stock soared, immensely after this. And same with Jalen Tolbert. They impressed me. So for a lot of people like, this wide receiver, roster is not all that. I feel like they definitely made a name for themselves. There's a couple other guys that kind of popped off. Also on defense, if you need a defensive lineman,
the D line blew up. This is
the year to get a guy, whether it's on the edge, interior, doesn't matter. And I know that Ian loves this guy too, but Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, that dude just has so much range. And just talking to him, like he knew his stuff. Someone asked him, like, what's the difference between Matt Rule and Dave Aranda's defense at Baylor? And he was just going off. He's like, yeah, Matt Rule ran like a 4.3. Now we're doing like a 2.52 or whatever it is, stuff like that. Like he was just going through each thing. He's like, while I'm here, I just told him I want to work at free safety because I never did that at Baylor. So that's what I want to do today. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dang, like this dude, like he said, I want to be the next, Tyrann Mathieu style, Buda Baker type guy. Mm-hmm. And just like hearing him talk football, like he knows his stuff. And he shows it on the field. He's confident in what he does. He's not second guessing anything. Like he was just quick reaction, instincts. It's all there. Like Jalen to me was one of the most impressive non-quarterback guys that I talked to.
Cool. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, well, Petrie, that shows up on tape too, man. I was so happy to see him doing well at the Senior Bowl, because you look at the tape, man. That guy plays at 110% all the time. But like, it's not like he's reckless. He knows what he's doing, man. He will blitz. He'll cover range in coverage. I wanted to see him in man coverage because a lot of his reps at Baylor were either blitzing in the box, being kind of that star player, or coming, kind of sitting off in zone, So there wasn't a ton of man, so I wanted to see him do that. I still think he can improve his technique there a little bit, but I did see some promising reps. So I do think he can translate there and be that slot guy, especially for Washington if you need a slot guy. But it's starting to look like he's not going to be available after the top 50 or 60 picks, man. Like there was some, earlier on in the offseason, maybe he's going to be a top 100 or 75, but he's probably comfortably in that top 55, 60 range now. So it's going to be tougher, but he's a very talented player. I'm a big fan of Petrie. I'll expand on the defensive line because that's kind of what I was watching the whole week. Boye Mafe, and that guy dominated the Senior Bowl game, man. But he had a 4.57 40-yard dash and a 40.5-inch vertical, documented in Feldman's Freaks at 6. I think he measured in at like 6'3.5" and 255 pounds with over 33-inch arms. So the dude's got size, he's got athleticism, he's got power, and you listen to him speak too. He's a very process-oriented guy. He knows how to stack rushes on top of each other, and I really liked how he developed over the course of the week, especially in the Senior Bowl game. He's putting together club rips. He was timing them very well. and he was bending around the apex and exploding off the line. He's a guy who I thought, for Washington maybe would be a guy if you're looking for that third edge rusher, or maybe if Montez eventually leaves, could slide in. But he might be a top 50 guy now too. He really impressed. Perry and Winfrey was dominant, the Oklahoma defensive tackle, especially on the.
He was a monster.
Oklahoma did not know how to use him.
No, man, they were putting him in nose tackle, man. But he got the lineup at 3 tech at the Senior Bowl, and he
was the MVP of the game, right? Am I correct?
That was the MVP of the game.
Yeah,
but his most impressive performance might have been day 2. He was dominant. There was not a single person who could block him that day. Straight line power, spin move, lateral agility, and man, every time he won a rep, he was like shouting and hollering. The guy does not have an off switch. Yeah, he's very intense, but you love that from your defensive lineman. So Perry and Winfrey, if you're Washington and you're looking for a guy in the later rounds that to kind of add into your rotation, I think Dominique Robinson from Miami, Ohio.
Got you.
Former wide receiver, 6'5", 250. Another very athletic guy, flashed a lot, especially on day 1, and had some nice reps going through the week 2. But he's a former wide receiver. Again, he's pretty new to the position, but really has been
under a year.
Yeah, under a year.
And what position does he play now? I said he's a wide receiver. And then what's he defensive line?
He's
an edge rusher. Okay, cool. Right. Wow. Okay. Wow. I must be really athletic.
He's big
wow.
too.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
He's big too. I think he measured in at like 6'5", 254 with over 33-inch arms again. So has that length that you want. Explosive. Great lateral agility. He left some guys in the lurch this week with his lateral agility, kind of feigning an outside rush and then stunting inside. And he did it so quickly, some tackles couldn't react. So he
put Falele on his butt like twice. He had back-to-back sacks on Pickett in practice, and he got up yelling. And Donovan White is like one of my buddies. They play together in Miami, Ohio. And he told me like before, he's like, dude, he was a quarterback and then he was a wide receiver.
Jesus,
and he's gained like 25 pounds and he's still just as fast. And he's still trying to put on like another 10 pounds. Like you talk about like a late round guy. And I get like people are like, we don't need defensive line. The Rams didn't need defensive line when they got Aaron Donald. He balled out.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
And turned out to be the best thing. You don't know what's going to happen with these interior guys. Dron Payne, like you said, Montez Sweat. Like,
it's good to reload.
If there's a guy there you like, get him.
Exactly. So I'm looking at maybe Robinson in round 4, take him there. But like, I don't think he'll last past that, especially when he tests. When he tests, it's going to be impressive. But he's a guy for sure. I'm trying to think of more. D'Angelo Malone, although he's a little bit on the lighter side, but he was really impressive this week too. I think he's more of a 3-4 OLB, so I'm not sure if he's a good scheme fit. But that speed to power, man, he was doing that all week. He was a fun player. Tyreek Smith had some nice reps. He had a hot motor, a little uncoordinated. So I think he's probably, if you're looking at like a round 5 guy, he could be a guy. Moving to the interior, I think Eric Johnson from Missouri State he came in a little late. I think he was an NFL PA Bowl standout. But he measured in at 6'4" with 300 pounds and I think over 34-inch arms. So again, really good length on the interior, and he was pretty explosive. He was able to drive power forward, had some nice flashes, had a wicked spin move on day 2, man, where he just left his guy reaching. So for that Missouri State guy, coming against FBS opponents, I want to see if you have the athleticism to match, and he certainly did. So I think looking at him, maybe a round 5 guy. Get him in that rotation because maybe Daron Payne's going to leave eventually. Neil Farrell too. If you want a guy that can play nose on odd fronts, he showed some things too. And Travis Jones, although he's not going to be available, you're not going to pick him. But I had to bring him up because he was dominant too. I mean, that guy, the nose tackle, was driving guys back all week. He'll probably be a top 64 pick, but a lot of fun players. And then I'll touch on offensive line very briefly because I know Washington may have a little bit of interest there. Marquise Hayes has some nice reps, a little uncoordinated sometimes, but definitely a powerful guy who's got a mauler gene. Zion Johnson, although probably not, going to be in their range. He might be a first-round pick at this rate because he was very good. I think he's more of a second-rounder, but he could get drafted there. A lot of people like him. Andrew Stuber had a good game. The Michigan guy, he could be a nice late-round guy with some versatility to play center, tackle, guard. So if you're looking for a nice depth guy, and then Matt Waletzko is another guy I'll bring up. North Dakota offensive tackle. If you're looking for a guy, he really impressed me, man. I mean, he was listed at 299 at North Dakota, so under 300 pounds. He came in at 310, so better length. He at 6'7", 6'7", 310. And the biggest question I had, because he's really athletic on tape, he moves really well. But could he sustain that? And he did with 310 pounds.
That's awesome.
He's super long. but he's able to bend his knees too. With 6'7" guys, sometimes you worry about their pad level. I know that's kind of been an issue for Falele and Penning, but I thought Let's Go showed some really nice knee bend. He was able to drive those pads into blocks, and he can use that length to wall guys off. And especially in the game too, there were some moments where he was getting to the second level really easily and attacking linebackers, man. So I love to see that from guys, and I think Matt Let's Go really improved his stock. Again, if it round 4 or 5 and you need a tackle, I think Let's Go could be a really nice developmental option who could go on to be a solid starter.
Dude, yeah, he had back-to-back reps against like Lucetta and Mafe in like practice, and then like I know Boy Mafe like came around the edge and he just grabbed him, like put him on the ground and laid on top of him. Yeah, like, he held his own. Like that was the one guy that really stood out to me. I'm like, who is this guy? Like I've got to look him up. Like what's his name and stuff. But yeah, like his size and frame's awesome. I want to ask you real quick, Ian, about Ed Ingram, another guy, LSU offensive lineman. Because, like I said, we're looking for a Brandon Sheriff kind of replacement, possibly.
Yeah, and there's so many names that are floating up in here. Like it's kind of like a lottery, like the lotto balls bouncing around.
I love it, man. Let it fly. It's good. Go for it, man. It's perfect.
Like, dude, it's insane, man. And I bet I'll bring some up in the chat that I forgot. Like, oh man, I should have brought up this guy. I'm
gonna re-listen to this pod. It's got these players again in the future. But go ahead.
Ed Ingram is a fun guy. He's got a checkered past, and I think that's something that Ron Rivera will do their due diligence, and other teams are going to kind of look at it a certain way because I think it was a sexual battery or something, or assault or something like that. So that'll be something that teams look into. Now he was cleared, he's playing now, obviously, but he was suspended for a little bit. So teams going to look into that. But purely as a player, he's a very fun player. He's a mauler, physical guy, and we saw that a couple times in the Senior Bowl where I think it was Fidarian Mathis or Devontae Wyatt, I can't remember who, but he absolutely stonewalled him. Just met him right at the contact point. Really extended violently and was able to push him back and wall him off. He's got a really well-proportioned frame, physical hands, explosive extensions. And he gets a little overzealous sometimes. So kind of overshoot angles and let guys, give him lanes inside. But I really like the physical traits that are there, the mauler mentality. He's a guy that you can put in a guard, and I think he'd be a really nice starter, a nice replacement for Sheriff. Some things to clean up. Again, not going to be that Sheriff level right away, but I think has the upside to be a really solid starter. So he was another guy who stood out a little bit. Again, the off-field stuff is going to be something that teams have to look into. But if he checks that box, if he clears it, because again, he was cleared. He's not. He's not doing anything. He wasn't found guilty or
anything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If he checks out, then you're looking at a guy who can be a solid starter.
Yeah. Last guy I'm gonna mention, offensive line, Jamari Sawyer. He played like everywhere on the line out of Georgia. I like him a lot. I talked to him like he was one. He's a guy I talked to for like 10 minutes at the breakfast. I know it's Georgia and they beat my Alabama Crimson Tide, but still, like that dude was so smart. And he was like, "Man, ain't nobody out here better than Wyatt and like all the guys I went against in practice every day." He's like, "I'm ready for the league." Like he was just a funny guy. So
he's not wrong. He's not wrong either, man. Yeah. Going up against Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith, and Wyatt. But yeah, Sawyer, I'll touch on him real quick. I'm sorry.
Man, go ahead. go for it.
He's another guy. He's like 6'3", I think 320, something around there, but he's got 34-inch arms, man. So he's got that. I love guys that are shorter with longer arms because when you're shorter, you have that natural leverage. That low man wins in the trenches, right? You don't have to strain as much to bend your knees and lower your pad level. But when you have longer arms too, you can reach the contact point sooner. Right? So that's the money combination right there. Jamari Sawyer has that. I think he translates really well at guard with his straight line power. He showed that off a ton at tackle, but we saw some lateral mobility issues. Sometimes he couldn't quite get around to guys. So I think you slide him inside, can be a very good player. So that's another one. And Sheriff was the tackle, moved into guard. I think
100%, exactly right.
Yeah, he said he wanted to settle in at guard. So I was like, good, we need you. Sounds good to
me. Come to Washington, please.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on, too, because Washington does have a trend of basically drafting people from the Senior Bowl. They basically had Montez Sweat was from the Senior Bowl, I believe. Who else? Jeremy Sprinkle. Was Cameron Curl, I think, was in the Senior Bowl, too?
McClellan might have been. I can't remember, man. I got to check. But yeah.
That's
Terry
awesome,
McLaurin was, right?
Yeah, Terry. Oh, yeah. Now he's the second fastest guy ever recorded. Tariq Woolen broke his record for fastest recorded.
Tariq Woolen's a freak, by the way. We got to bring him up.
And that was on recovery, too. Like, he got beat at the line. He caught up. It was like 22.6 miles per hour. It was wild.
Jeez. All right, let me throw one last softball question out to you guys. I'm going to kind of wrap it up. So you guys don't have to answer this, but it's kind of intriguing. Do you have any hot takes walking away from the Senior Bowl, or do you have one player you want to put your stamp on? That's my guy. He's going to make it in the NFL. Either one of you guys. Start off with you, Josh. Go ahead.
I mean, Malik and Sam Howell, like I'm like a fangirl for those two guys. So I'm gonna try to get away for quarterbacks just because I love them as people, but then quarterback wise, I just love their game. Roger Mccreery, even though he's an Auburn guy, he's a small, like people have been picking on his size. That dude is like ruthless and he's relentless when he's playing. People are like kind of downplaying his size, and I get it. I like these small guys just like balling out in the league, regardless of whether it's quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and stuff like that. But just talking to him, he's like, man, nobody was talking about my wingspan when I was locking down like John Mechie and stuff all season long. I was like, dude, you're right. Like the measurements are brought up, but then you put the tapes on, and he was one of the best corners in college football. So even though he's, Auburn player, I became a huge fan of his after just talking to him and seeing him in practice. So I'd say he's one of my guys that I'm really rooting for at the league.
Cool. What about you, Ian?
Shoot, I try not to be a hot take artist, but I will give some guys that I'm more confident in. And I was pretty confident in these guys coming in, but they kind of won me over a little bit. Starting with the trench group, because I watched that again. I got to bring up Perry and Winfrey and Boye and Mafe. Mafe has a really good head on his shoulders, really high character guy. Very well spoken when you hear him talk. And again, the physical traits are he's got everything. He's got explosiveness. He's got bend. He's got power. He's got strength. This is a guy who I think can go on to be a double-digit sack guy. So I'm looking at Boye and Mafe. I would really, I would rarely stand on a table for a guy because there's so many potential outcomes. I can't tell you the guy's going to be a home run, but I am more confident in him than I am for most guys, and he's going to probably end up a top 50 player for me. Perry and Winfrey goes without saying. We already brought it up, so I'll just leave that there. But Jermaine Johnson too on the edge. He was very good all week. He's got another well-rounded palette of traits. Again, he's pretty explosive. He's got good lateral agility, and again, very refined pass rusher for his age. So I think Jermaine Johnson, he could end up being a top 15, top 20 pick. So he definitely showed out. Some guys across the other side of the ball, Calvin Austin, Memphis, and I think. The question that I keep asking whenever I come back to him is if Tutu Atwell went round 2, how high can Austin go? Now, obviously, Atwell was an outlier. We're not going to see another guy go that high with that size. And Austin is like 5'7" and 3/8 with 174 pounds. But he's smaller. He's never going to be the X guy. But I think if you know how to use him, get him in the slot, get him in space, move him around, he's a separation factory. I mean, this guy is super twitchy, explosive out of his breaks, can sink his hips, really, really nuanced, methodical route runner too. He knows how to manipulate blind spots. And then, at the catch point, obviously not the largest wingspan, but he can elevate and reach for passes. Like he's not a liability there. So I think Calvin Austin, and then he's pretty agile, elusive after the catch. He has a return experience. I think for a coach that knows how to use him can be a game-breaking talent. And then, we'll go to the other side of the spectrum, about 7 inches taller, Christian Watson. I mean, this guy, North Dakota State, he came in and the biggest question for him, having the size, he's clearly athletic. He has return experience at 6'4", 210.
Wow.
Just
he's a monster out there.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's literally, and he came in and was the best receiver on his team. I mean, this was a guy who, he ran routes. He showed really good hip sync, explosiveness out of his breaks. Same as Calvin Austin. And then also, made some really nice circus catches, that body control, that ball tracking ability. His hands were some of the most consistent all week. Some guys like Romeo Doubs definitely has the talent. And I'm a big fan of Doubs, but he was dropping a lot of passes. Some of the guys were too. But Christian Watson was very consistent there. You saw that in the game too. There was that one Pickett throw that was kind of low. He had to really adjust to corral it, and he did. I think Christian Watson ends up being a top 2-3 round pick. And he can go on to be a very good playmaker in the league because, he makes those plays too, but you get him the ball in space and he's very creative, very elusive. He's just one of those all-out playmakers that I'm very excited to see what he does in the NFL because I think the Senior Bowl was just a little snippet of that. So Christian Watson, Calvin Austin, and then a bunch of other guys, but we'd be here for 3 more hours if we kept naming guys. So
I love you guys. Your eyes light up, both of you guys. We start talking about players. I love it, man. It's such a great thing. So Josh, real quick, we wrap it up. Hey, go ahead.
One hot take: Washington will draft a running back from the Senior Bowl.
Is it Pierce? Because I like Pierce a lot.
Tyler Batty,
Pierce is my guy.
Rashard White. I mean, even TJ Pledger, who was like a late add-on guy, and like in the game he looked good. Tyler Batty running routes should not have been allowed. That's all I'm gonna say because that dude is crazy. And we need help at running back. I hate to say it.
I agree with you, man. I agree with you 100%.
Number 2 running back.
Fellas, you guys absolutely crushed it, man. So obviously I know you guys on a personal level, but you guys had outstanding work. I'm glad you guys had a great Senior Bowl experience. You guys definitely educated all of us. I really appreciate it. Josh is bringing on home. Let's talk about some upcoming projects you have or where people can find you on socials and break it all down for us.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Taylor CFB. Like I said, we're with the Takeover Sports Network. We've got some really big things cooking up. So like our SC podcast has like No Sean Marino, Travaris King, Blaine Gilmer, and then my buddy Donovan White, who like I said, he lives up in Ohio. We have Monty Ball coming on as another host for the Big Ten podcast, and then some other things. I might be getting a former quarterback as my co-host. There's a meeting going on like right now that I don't know about, but just big things cooking up.
Nice.
So I'm watching my phone because I'm going to hear back from it. But yeah, Draft Takeover podcast. Like I said, I'm looking forward to, having some players on, talking to them. It's probably my favorite part about the draft season, just talking to players, hearing more about them. Like I've watched enough of the tape. Like just talk to me about you, your journey here and what you're looking forward to in the league, stuff like that. Yeah, big things coming up. Super excited about it.
Looking forward to it, man. Really appreciate that. Ian, what about you, man? What kind of projects you have and where can they find you on socials?
Yeah, so you can find me at Ian_Cummings_9. Got just it's draft stuff. That's what it is. But always updating scouting reports, especially with the Senior Bowl. Got to go back and add the Senior Bowl updates and see how guys performed. But writing more scouting reports. In fact, I just got assigned a couple more this week. One of them, Kirby Joseph, safety.
Ooh, I like Kirby. He was fun after the game too.
Yeah, exactly. So he's a fun player. So I'm excited to keep writing up more guys. I'll be going to the combine, so that'll be fun.
Hell yeah, man! Awesome.
Inside look, and then I may have a podcast coming soon.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Cool.
We will see. It's in the works, but
you're a natural, man. It comes off real easy for you, man. You got it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, I always get off, and I'm like, man, I slipped up that one time.
Dude, you're flawless. You're good. Keep it going.
I can't do that. But hey, it's gonna be fun. And Ali's a great guy. He was the guy who turned me on to Christian Watson, and he's kind of put me on the path for a few other great prospects. And but we're also looking for. He's got some great interviews coming with guys too. Like Josh said, that's the best part of it. I feel like the draft process tends to dehumanize these guys sometimes. Like, we need a corner, we need a slot guy, we need a guy we need a 3-4 OLB. That's not all these guys are. These are kids who are trying to live their dream.
Yeah,
right?
Make a living. Yeah.
The best thing you can do, to interview them is kind of provide their perspective. And so Ali's got some. I'm going to try and get some here in a little bit too to help provide their perspective, help people learn more about them, not just as a player, but as a person too. Kind of humanize them and bring them closer to everyone. So that's always a valuable part of it too. But then the analysis and then the podcasting. It's all coming together, and there's a lot left to do before April, but I'm confident we'll get it done, and I'm confident that Josh will too. I mean, a lot of great content, man. It's tough to take it all in sometimes, but you have to. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's awesome. It's really good. So, guys, thank you for everything. I really appreciate that. Definitely follow Josh and Ian on social media, on Twitter. They're always on providing great content. My name is George Carmi at GCarmi21. You can also find me at the Full Press Coverage podcast at FPC_Washington, WSH. Have a great night, everybody. See you guys later.